Ideally, whenever we talk about any abusive relationship, we can fairly assume that the victim will end up hating the abuser. This is not the case with trauma bonds. In trauma bonds, in reality, the victim actually ends up falling in love with the abuser, and he allows abuser to subject him to this kind of abusive treatment for years together. In a personal, romantic, or professional relationship, if it's like walking on the eggshells every moment, if the highs are too high and the lows are too low, if in such relationships it's all about pleasing the other person, if you're trapped in a relationship where you have to keep anticipating the needs of the other person because you are afraid of upsetting the other person, and in that case of upset, the other person may either get into rage or get into a withdrawn kind of technique by giving you silent treatment for months together, and therefore you do not want him to ever get upset, and you keep on anticipating his next need to fulfill that need so that he never gets upset. If it's all about your entire world becomes so micro that it's all about this person, his family, this boss, your own office, and nothing beyond that. If it's all about future faking through the self-talk, and you're constantly telling yourself, if I try a little harder, things will be better. This person will change. Eventually, with time, he will start understanding my commitment, my dedication. This person will change, the circumstances will change, the things will be better. Just a little harder. I just need to try a little harder. My dear friends, accept that you are in a trauma bonded relationship. Yes, and trauma bond is nothing but an emotionally abusive relationship, which for years together people do not want to accept that they are into an abusive or a trauma bonded relationship. Hi, Namaste. I'm Dr. Meenu, taking you through the self-discovery process, helping you understand your own self, why you get into such trauma bonded relationships, why you fall into some wrong patterns, and how to heal yourself so that you live lighter on this planet during your beautiful journey. Emotionally abusive relationships are like substance abuse. You crave for that appreciation. You crave for those moments which made you feel good. You crave for that little bit of appreciation. You crave for that acknowledgement. You crave for that little cookie, that little breadcrumb which is given to you once in a while. It's like the same cycle of pain versus pleasure. So the same abuser who gives you pain is the one who's going to give you pleasure. He puts you through abuse and then he comes back giving you pleasure. It's something like, actually, you in that craving situation, you go through that psychological dance, and this psychological dance is being put up because of the dance of two chemicals. The chemicals are cortisol and dopamine. Cortisol is a stress hormone which is released when you go through that abusive pain. So when the abuser is putting you through a lot of abuses, the cortisol is released, and when this abuser comes back with some form of apology or some kind of gift or some kind of reconciliation, dopamine chemical is released, and dopamine chemical is feel good chemical. So your brain gets into the cycle of pain versus pleasure, and it craves for that pain versus pleasure cycle. It actually craves for the pleasure, and what happens is your brain never feels stable, grounded, or safe, because obviously in this kind of situation, when you're walking on the eggshell, when things are so unpredictable, you really don't know when the abuser will get angry or upset, when he might scream, when he might go into complete silence for weeks or for months together. You're always walking on the eggshells and with fear of upsetting the abuser. Research shows that people who stay in such kind of abusive relationships end up developing asthma, eczema, high blood pressure, and even autoimmune diseases. Now imagine the kind of damage that is being done to your body without your knowing that you are going through this kind of abusive cycle again and again. Research also shows that, interestingly, research also shows that people who stay in trauma bonded relationship for a long time, and once they decide to walk away from such relationship, may end up being into a healthy relationship, but they get bored of this healthy relationship and a stable relationship very soon. So whether it is a relationship or a job, once somebody has stayed in a trauma bond for some time, when they get into a healthy relationship, a stable job, they find it very difficult to love that kind of atmosphere, because the brain gets addicted to those highs and those lows. Remember that trauma bond is not planned. It's a dynamic, it's a relationship dynamic which can happen to anyone. It stems out of fear of rejection or abandonment issues stemming out of one's childhood. If you can resonate with any of this trauma bonded conditions which I have discussed with you, I want you to recall your childhood, because you might be mirroring the same childhood patterns that you had witnessed as a child without even your own knowing. It is deeply buried in your subconscious mind, and first you get gravitated towards such kind of familiar situations because your brain remembers that, your subconscious mind remembers that. So you gravitate towards the same kind of toxic manipulative people, and then you get carried away, you completely lose yourself in such relationships and allow them, because you have high level of tolerance to give to such situations, and therefore you allow such manipulative people to run over you and manipulate you again and again. You are so forgiving without even your knowing. You stay in such relationships for so long. You might not even be having any idea that a healthy relationship is not like this. This is unhealthy, emotionally manipulative relationship. So when I'm saying I want you to recall your childhood, you might be mirroring the same pattern that you witnessed in your childhood. Think of your childhood. If one of your parents or your caregivers were emotionally unavailable, they made you feel unseen, unheard, unloved, uncared, unprotected. They just made you feel invisible, and as a child you had to survive yourself. You were in a survivor mode, and therefore in the survivor mode you kept hanging on, looking at them and expecting to get some pieces of attention from them once in a while. So attention was given, but in an intermittent manner. It was a love which was intermittent. So sometimes they would pay some attention to you and then again emotionally neglect you. They would make you feel invisible. In that condition, if you faced those kind of situation, you might be mirroring the same pattern now as an adult. Or it could be that although they were emotionally available, you were given love, but it was in a very withdrawn kind of way. So everything was conditional. The implicit message to you was time and again that if you perform certain actions, if you contribute in this manner, if you meet their desires in terms of your behavior, love would be given, otherwise love will be withdrawn. So they would withdraw love the moment you would do something which was of your desire and not their desire. So you might be mirroring the same kind of pattern now as an adult. Now in all these cases, tangible items, tangible way of protecting the child and tangible things were provided to the child, which is a very sad way of looking at parenting, because several parents still live with the idea that parenting is all about equipping the child with all the tangible items, and this would keep the child happy. But it's not so. For a child, the mind, brain, the heart is such a fragile thing which at that point of time needs intangible things, intangible love more than the tangible items that the parents can provide through money. Another pattern which might be mirroring or repeating, which you are not aware of, could be that you were living in a home which was very unpredictable in the sense that it was like walking on the eggshells. Your caregiver would suddenly get angry, scream, get into rage if anything was not up to his desires. If something was against his desires, the caregiver would get into rage. Could be because of alcoholism, or without alcoholism, anger issues. And as a child, what the child would do is, because of that scream, the child was scared, and out of that scare, being afraid of that rage, the child would again try to go into survivor and adaptive mode, and would adapt himself to not commit any kind of fault, so that the caregiver would again go into some kind of rage. And now as an adult, that those unlearnings have not been done, so you might be operating in the same adaptive mode as an adult, and that is why you have gravitated towards this kind of relationship. See, no parent does anything intentionally. Whatever happens is because their own childhood programming has been wrong, or the traumas that they carry have not been healed. So the same patterns gets repeated to you, and the same pattern make you gravitate towards wrong, manipulative people. An extreme form of this pattern could be sexual abuse. Usually in sexual abuses, the child is told by the caregiver that this is love, I'm doing this out of love. So what happens is, as a child, he accepted that physical intimacy or sexual intimacy is a form of love. And today, if he falls into a trauma bonded situation, usually in trauma bonded situations, during the reconciliation, the abuser either gives gift or he gets into makeup sex. So the victim might be mirroring the same pattern of what was done to him as a child, and thinks that, and craves for this kind of sexual intimacy, thinking that this is what love is, and I'm getting this love on and off, which is more than enough. So those highs and lows make the victim stay in such a toxic, manipulative situation for years together. As a child, you idolized your parents because that is what a child does. For him, the parents or the caregivers are the world. So in all such abuses that I have discussed, the child in any case idealizes his parents, and today as an adult, he is being programmed and conditioned to do the same thing with his abuser. So to the outside world, whatever happens within the four walls, whatever tolerance, whatever abuses that he goes through, he justifies the behavior of his abuser to the outside people, outside the four walls, by giving the same excuses that the abuser usually gives. Abuser usually says, I did not have a good day today, my boss was not very kind to me, I had a argument with somebody outside the home, and that is why I misbehaved with you. And the same excuses through the self-talk the victim gives to himself and to the outsider, that otherwise he is very nice. Sometimes he gets into rage, and sometimes he lashes out at me and misbehaves. Which is such a wrong way of tolerating wrong, manipulative and toxic behavior. When we are living a life being unaware that we are codependent, we end up falling into these wrong patterns again and again. Remember that when you fall into any toxic, narcissistic pattern, the narcissistic will use you as a fuel. For him, you are a source of supply, and therefore those highs, lows, those manipulative techniques will be used again and again, because for the narcissistic, generating fuel, energy on his own is not possible, and the only way he can do this is by gaining control over you, by manipulating you. And therefore it is so essential to recognize that this is not a healthy relationship. Major problem with such kind of relationships is the abuser keeps on abusing the victim, and victim never acknowledges that he is being abused. Why? Because those intermittent love or attention that he gets is enough for him to stay in the relationship. Even after acknowledging that a person is in a abusive relationship, why is it so difficult for the victim to leave such a relationship? The victim's mind is emotionally imprisoned. It is imprisoned in a manner that the abuser may tell the victim that if you leave, you're such a horrible person if you leave me. Or the victim may be hearing things like, no one is going to love you the way I have loved you. Or the victim probably, as I already mentioned, may have no idea what a healthy relationship is, so he likes to stay in the same mess. Another thing which happens is, if the victim has been raised in a family with statements such as, oh, you are an overthinker, oh, you're so emotional, you think so much, you overanalyze things, or he was ridiculed, oh, you are overreacting to these situations, you should not be overreacting like that. If the abuser now is mirroring the same pattern, the same kind of statements is being mirrored, the victim in all likelihood is going to blame himself and think that it is his fault that he is being over emotional, overthinker and overreacting to these situations, and he must have little more patience to carry on. In all these situations, the victim eventually thinks that little more of effort is required from his end, a little more of time, little more of right words which are required to save the relationship. And this is what is the foundation behind staying back in such relationship. Should I try harder or should I leave? And in most likelihood, the victim usually thinks that I must try harder. In the highs, the abuser usually messes up with the authenticity and reality of the victim by making statements such as, you are so kind, you are so compassionate, so loving, you're so forgiving, even during my bad tempers you show so much of patience, you are such a nice human being. So what happens is, during the lows, when the abuses are being vetted out to the victim thinks of all those messed up realities and think that because I am so patient, because I am so compassionate, because I am so nice, I must put up with all this toxicity, all this abuses, because after all, out of the two of us, I am the one who's more compassionate, caring and loving. In any relationship, if the energy exchange is not equal, if there is imbalance in give and take, what happens is it ends up draining the victim, and a stage comes wherein even if the mind of the victim is convinced that he wants to put in more energy, more effort in the relationship, the body starts showing the symptoms in some way or the other. As I already discussed, the problems of asthma, eczema, high blood pressure and other things start cropping up. My dear friends, that is the reason I want you to believe and accept that trauma bond is not a relationship, it is not love, it is not authentic, it is just an illusion. It is your brain, it is your child brain which is drawing you towards such kind of toxic patterns. It is your childish brain which is gravitating towards such kind of manipulative people. And when you get sucked into these kind of manipulative situations, it is your brain which is asking you to stay, it is asking you to save the relationship, it is asking you to put in a little more of effort, it is asking you to bear with all these toxicities and abuses and nonsense which you should not be subjected to. Believe me, we all are divine beings, we all are born to receive love, we all are in human body, but we are all divine, we all have fragments of divinity in all of us. We are not meant to suffer in this lifetime. So unless you realize and accept that there is an abusive relationship, you are a part of this abusive relationship and you are being victimized by the abuser, you will not find the courage to either walk away or take appropriate decision to safeguard your own soul, and which is so important. I really wish that through this video you understand, at least identify the patterns and understand that why you have in the first place fallen into such a relationship. And once you identify that, other things become easier to follow. My dear friends, you were chasing love as a child. You were made to chase love by your caregivers as a child, and you are still chasing love. Stop playing this runner-chaser game. Identify the red flags, and if possible, get out of such kind of relationship. Walk away if possible. See, remember that the whole foundation of such a relationship is so weak, It is only about winning the game by the abuser. So at any point of time you get into an argument, anything that you share with the abuser will be used against you, which you had shared during the good times. If the abuser fears losing an argument or a fight, the abuser may also get into victimized mode the moment he fears that he's about to lose an argument or a fight with you. The whole chemistry of this kind of relationship is so confusing. It's so confusing. It messes up your mind, because there's going to be abuses which makes you feel completely low, and then which is followed by apology, a fake apology, which is again going to make you feel that at least the person has the decency to come and seek apology or offer you gift or probably a make-up sex kind of thing. The whole chemistry is like, they abuse you, they hoover you, they suck you back. They can never treat you right. They will never allow you to leave the relationship, yet they can never treat you right. You forgive them, you forgive the abuser, you believe in their lies. Every time when they tell you that after the fight, when they want to reconcile, they give you an excuse, because I had a bad day with my boss, therefore I was a little rageful. I had a fight with my friend outside, so I got angry and I screamed at you. My dear friends, you believe those excuses, you believe those lies, but you got to believe one fact: you are not a punching bag. You are not a psychological, emotional punching bag for anyone. Whatever anyone goes through outside has to be dealt outside and not with you. You are not meant to be subjected to this kind of treatment. If the person really loves you, the person will never vet out this kind of treatment to you. Believe the fact that you are a lovable person. You are allowing all this to happen because you are low in self-worth, you are low in self-love. You were never taught to love yourself. You were never taught to have high level of self-worth, and that is why you're allowing somebody to use you as a punching bag again and again, and you are forgiving them again and again for all their misdeeds. Therefore, I request all of you to understand that love is divine, love is mutual, love is equal give and take. No relationship deserves to receive this kind of treatment where one person is subjected to all the abuses and is made to feel scared and walk on the eggshells all the time, fearing that the other person will get upset or will withdraw and go into silent treatment. Now, the last thing that I want to know is, once you fall into this kind of relationship, what to do if you really want to get out of such a relationship. See, my friends, the most important thing is to identify that you are in a trauma bond, and this is the most difficult thing, because as per the literature, as per the research, the victims stay in such relationships because they think that this is a definition of healthy relationship. They have no idea that they are being abused. They have no idea that this is unhealthy. So identifying those patterns wherein you are subjected to this kind of treatment again and again as a pattern, despite the apology, the same cycle is repeated: pain, pleasure, pain, pleasure. If it is repeated again and again, it is high time that you first identify, accept and acknowledge the fact that you are not in a healthy dynamic. Any step that you want to take can be taken only once you identify and become aware of the fact that there is a pattern which is toxic, manipulative and unhealthy. As I said, trauma bonds are extremely difficult to break because there is a intense chemistry playing between dopamine and cortisol. So it's not so much about your heart, it's more about your brain. It's extremely intense and very difficult for the trauma bonded person to break the trauma bond and come out of it. And therefore, after you identify that you are in a trauma bonded relationship, you got to accept that it is not normal, it is a manipulative and toxic cycle in which you have become a victim. Once you accept that, it is time for you to start working on yourself. You identify those patterns. Those patterns are emanating from mother, father, childhood, wherever. It could be your friend, it could be your teacher, it could be anybody. Once you identify those patterns, you have to start self-healing and self-therapy. Self-healing and self-therapy would involve, as I keep saying in all my videos, it's all about meditative, the right kind of meditation and the right kind of breath work, as we may call it, breath work. So in my case, I have seen that meditation has played a very important role. It is a very powerful tool, because what you do is, during the meditation, you go within, you identify and recall all those moments in your subconscious mind which are lying deeply buried in your subconscious mind. You bring them to surface. You address them, and you address them because only once you identify and address them, you can release them. Once you release them, it becomes easier for you to actually start with a blank slate. So you no longer remain the same person that you were as a child, and those childhood patterns that you had learned can be unlearned only once you face those patterns. You accept that this was something wrong which was happening, and now I'm ready to restart my life with a new zeal, with a new zest. So self-healing would involve meditation, which might be very painful. At times you may feel like giving up also, but it's all about right determination, right dedication. In case you find that self-healing is very painful, you may go for you may seek therapy from a trained psychotherapist also. Psychotherapist who understands what trauma bonds are and how to help the person detach from these trauma bonds. Because remember one thing, as I keep saying, these are mental blocks that we carry. Why we carry these mental blocks? Because there are chemicals in the brain which are playing, which are dancing, dopamine as well as cortisol. They are playing their own psychological dance, and therefore there are times when you will, just like a drug addict, feel like going back to the abuser. Because as in the case of substance abuse, once you're trying to withdraw from the addiction, after a certain period of time, 4 months, 6 months, the drug will call you back, and you would feel like gravitating towards the drug once again. And same thing happens in case of such trauma bonds also. You would feel like gravitating towards such a relation again. You'll feel sad and empty from inside. But that's where your strong determination, your strong dedication comes to fore. You have to keep in mind that you are not going back to that same cycle, that same pain versus pleasure cycle once again. You have to start valuing yourself. You have to fall in love with yourself. You have to have high level of self-worth. And as I keep saying in all my videos, for building that high level of self-worth and self-love, you have to address all those childhood traumas, those core wounds which you are carrying in your subconscious mind, and release them lovingly, release them gently. You will turn into a completely new person who's full of self-worth. Also, once you decide to either seek therapy from outside or self-heal yourself, and once you again and again feel like going back, you have to remember one thing, that such kind of relationships usually isolate you from your people, from your family people, from your friends. So it is important to build a network. It is important to stand guard to one fact, that you need a support system from outside. Have friends, go back to your family people who support you unconditionally and who do not want to judge you as being wrong or having some kind of fault, and being impatient and not putting in 100% of effort in the relationship. So start building your hobbies, start spending time on your hobbies and anything which makes you feel good. Having financial freedom is again one of the most important steps. Once you feel financially strong, detaching yourself from this kind of relationship becomes easy. In any case, remember that whatever you do, self-healing, outside therapy, you have to emotionally detach from the abuser, which is very difficult. But anything can be done only once you emotionally prepare yourself that this is an abuse and I am not going to be a psychological punching bag to anybody. And once you take that decision, you start yourself emotionally detaching from the person. And emotional detachment may involve several months of reading the patterns, identifying the patterns, and taking step back during each pattern. Now, whether you are trapped in a trauma bond in a professional sphere or a personal sphere, you have to take a conscious decision whether you want to stay in such a situation or you want to walk away from from this kind of bond. Now, in some cultures, when it comes to marriage, separation from marriage is taken in a very judgmental way, and usually there is a big taboo attached to separation and divorce. So many people stay in such toxic relationship despite knowing that they are in a toxic relationship. I would suggest that in case it is possible, quit, walk away, leave the relationship, or in case it is not possible because of either this kind of cultural taboo or because of children being involved, the right thing is to, as I said, first emotionally detach yourself. Secondly, stop contributing in a relationship. Stop any kind of emotional contribution in the relationship. Gradually you start taking steps back so that your emotional contribution and your verbal contribution also reduces towards the relationship. There is another important thing that you have to keep in mind, and that is, in case you plan to stay in the relationship because there is no exit route and exiting is not an easy task, in that case one good strategy that can be adopted is going grey rock. Grey rock is a strategy in which you live within the same four walls, but the communication is to the minimum. So you do not communicate much, only you communicate when it is important, when it concerns your kids or when it concerns some important parameter about your home, some important decision about your home. You only communicate minimal. So that is grey rocking. Or you can go no contact. In case that is possible, that you simply do not connect with the person, that also is possible. But in any case, there is an important thing which you must remember, that financial freedom is very important for the victim. So when I said build your networks, start going out, build your hobbies, I also meant that you need to have strong financial backing, so that in case the abuser tries to manipulate you with the finances that he carries, if he has the freedom to decide on your finances, then you are already in a mess, and moving out of such a relationship, even emotionally detaching, will not be possible. So you need to start developing your own financial freedom, so that taking not just a decision regarding no contact or grey rocking is easy, but also in case you really want to physically walk away from the relationship, it becomes easy for you. My dear friends, I hope this long video has been of some help in making you understand what kind of relationship you are in, and in case it helps you identify that some kind of patterns are being repeated, there are certain steps that you can take. You have to self-protect yourself. Nobody is going to come as a savior and protect you from all that abuse that you are going through. Understand that you are being a super sensitive person, being an empath, being a person who's codependent. You actually have so much of power within you, but this power was suppressed in the childhood, and you have to unlearn that. It is important for you to unlearn those patterns that you learned in the childhood, release those patterns and see the power within you, see the light within you. It is amazing. We all human beings have so much of power and so much of light, but we just do not let it shine because it was dimmed either in the childhood or in some emotionally abusive relationship. I hope that I could be of some help to my viewers. Let's stay connected. I'll see you again in the next video. Love, light and peace. Namaste.